is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Today on the show, we are marking a milestone. Vermont Public's people-powered journalism podcast, Brave Little State, has just published its 200th episode. To celebrate, the team set themselves a challenge: answer 20 listener questions in a single episode. To do it, they combed through the Brave Little State archive with thousands of your questions in it. And they picked out some favorites that have never won a listener voting round and been answered. We're going to play portions of that show for you today. Some things they found out are going to shock you. Other things are going to make you laugh out loud. As you're listening, your favorite Brave Little State from over the years might pop into your mind. A couple of my favorite episodes surely did. You can give that episode a shout out today by emailing Vermont Edition at vermontpublic.org. Maybe a Brave Little State reporter came to your community or interviewed a family member of yours. Email us about it, and we'll open up our phone lines later in the hour too. But first, here's Brave Little State.
From Vermont Public and the NPR network, this is Brave Little State. I'm Josh Crane.
I'm Burgess Brown.
I'm Sabine Pooks.
And I'm Camila Van Order Gonzalez, a.k.a. Mimi.
And we are the BLS team, and we are gathered here for a very special milestone. It is our 200th episode as a show. Congrats to us.
We made it.
That's pretty nuts.
In honor of this very special episode, we are going to do something a little bit different. Normally on the show, we answer one listener question per episode. And today, we are endeavoring to answer 20 listener questions, all in the same episode. How are you guys feeling about it?
I'm tired already.
It's going to be fun.
We went through our entire archive. It's like thousands of questions. And collectively, we selected some of our favorites that we've never answered on the show before. We've broken up the questions into 5 categories that we're going to tackle today. Category number 1, historical and legal oddities. Category number 2, creatures. Category 3, culture and geography. Category 4, politics. And category 5, a BLS classic, name origin stories. So we divvied all the questions up, went off and did reporting and research and found answers, and we've pretty much been keeping all of that close to the vest. We have not shared what we found with each other until now. That's why we're gathered today, to share our findings with each other for the first time. You guys ready?
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what all of you have been working on for the last couple of weeks.
I know. What are you up to?
Mysteries.
We usually don't keep it this secret.
We are going to start with our category called historical and legal oddities.
Of which there are so many.
Of which there are so many. People are so curious about these. And I actually took on the first one. And this was a question that goes like this. Vermont has a law that says apple pie must be served with cheese. What is the story behind it? So, question asker Brooke Angel grew up in Randolph. She lives in Chicago now. And she actually came across this topic at a trivia night north of Chicago. The final question of the night was this. A Vermont law states that when serving apple pie in Vermont, a good faith effort must be made to serve it along with the following: a glass of cold milk, a scoop of vanilla ice cream, and a half ounce of blank. Now, Brooke had never heard of this law, but having grown up in Vermont, she knew intuitively that the answer must be, of course, cheddar cheese. So, have any of you heard of this?
No.
Absolutely not.
So Brooke was a hero for her trivia team because she got the answer right. But she went home afterwards and kept thinking about this because it seems so weird and funny and unusually funny for, like the law. So she submitted her question to us, and here is what I've learned. The bill was passed in 1999. Now, Burgess, I've sent you the text of the important part of the bill in question. And I'm wondering if you could channel your inner Vermont lawmaker and read sections 1 and 2 for us.
Oh, I should have known this was coming. All right.
Let's hear it, Burgess.
An act relating to designating the state pie and the state fruit. It is hereby enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Vermont. Section 1, the state pie shall be apple pie. Section 2, the subheading here is serving apple pie. When serving apple pie in Vermont, a, quote, good faith effort shall be made to meet one or more of the following conditions. A, with a glass of cold milk. B, with a slice of cheddar cheese weighing a minimum of a ½ ounce. C, with a large scoop of vanilla ice cream. And then it goes on to section 3, which is the state fruit, and the state fruit shall be the apple.
Well done, Burgess, truly.
Thank you.
And here is the extra fun part. It turns out that our question asker, Brooke, actually has personal connections to the Vermont State House. Her grandfather is Phil Angel, who was a state representative for a decade here. And this law about apple pie and cheddar cheese passed during Brooke's grandfather's time in the Vermont legislature.
What?
So, of course, Brooke sent her grandfather an email to ask about what he remembers from when this law was passed. And here is Phil Angel's response to Brooke. Quote, I don't remember this law passing the House. It really has no force or effect other than something to talk about or even brag about. End quote.
Well, that is what we are doing.
They got us.
And I want to just say, so Phil, Brooke's grandfather, also added, quote, not everything that happens in the legislature is entirely serious. End quote.
Wow.
So the sponsor of this bill back in 1999 was a well-known Vermont lawmaker and activist, Ed Paquin, and he explained his motivations for creating this bill in the first place.
I was contacted by an instructor of, I think it was a grade 2-3 class, that they were going through the effort of teaching the kids about how laws are made, and I'm pretty sure they generated the idea of making apple pie the state pie.
So the students came up with the idea, and he helped them run it through the whole process, including lobbying for it at the State House.
And this was the cutest thing. They came around the room, and I had told them how they'd be asked to testify. And the little kid got up there and started talking about the apples.
That is so sweet.
I know. So the elementary school students, they succeeded in making apple pie the state pie. Ed says it was actually other lawmakers who had even more fun with it, adding the notable section for our purposes about milk and ice cream and cheddar cheese.
Just feels like a lot of dairy to me. I'm not sure.
All right, so we're rolling into question number 3 here. And Mimi, this one goes to you.
Oh my goodness. Guys, this one's nuts.
Okay.
How did Vermont come to have and sustain public nudity allowances? Could one of you explain the Vermont nudity laws to me?
Here's what I've heard, and I don't know if it's true, but I feel like what I've heard is that in Vermont, you can be naked in public, but you can't strip down in public. Meaning, if you leave the house naked, you're in the clear. But if you're like on the street and take off all your clothes, that's illegal.
That's what I've heard too.
This is like something I learned on like a college tour. I agree with Burgess. Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys would not be alone. A ton of people that I talked to for this thought the same thing, and I did too. For my entire life growing up, that's what I thought it was. That is actually entirely just Vermont folklore. It's not true. There is nothing supporting that in the actual laws.
Mimi, you're just crumbling like my entire Vermont mythology in my head.
Sabine's college tour was a lie.
I know, what?
The Vermont Lewd and Indecent Conduct Statute says no person shall participate in open and gross lewdness. So there's been a long history of Vermont court cases that have to do with the ambiguity of the words open and gross. At this point, what people have interpreted is that gross has to do with intent and open has to do with consent. So if you're being gross, it means that you're thinking about something sexual. And if you're being open, it means that someone witnessed it and they did not want to be witnessing it.
But what if you're in public and you're naked and there's just you could encounter random people who don't want to see naked people in public, right?
So, yeah, there's a changing culture around that right now. Notably, Burlington a couple weeks ago changed their nudity ordinances to make it illegal to be naked in public there.
Whoa.
But another key moment in the history of the Vermont nudity laws is that in 1971, Patrick Leahy, as the state's attorney for Chittenden County, wrote this really sassy, open letter to the police. He talked about how public nudity and skinny dipping is like a key part of Vermont culture. What he said in the letter was, quote, "If no member of the public present is offended, no disorderly conduct has taken place."
So why is there this rumor that the law is this other way if it's really not?
I have talked to so many lawyers about this and nobody knows.
Just a game of telephone or something.
How do you guys feel about public nudity?
No comment.
All right, we're now moving on to our next category, which is creatures, in quotes, just in time for Halloween. Burgess, we're going to you.
Okay, so our next question comes from Lucy Zenzian in Hardwick, and it concerns a very spooky interaction that she had with a coworker. So one day, Lucy was preparing to go to Montgomery up in Franklin County for a work trip, and her coworker pulled her aside to say this.
"Oh, you be careful up there. They got this thing." And I was like, "What are you talking about? What thing?" And she goes, "They call it a geeboo." And I was like, "What's a geeboo?" And she goes, "I don't know." And I never learned much past that very vague introduction.
God.
Wow.
So
Oh, I know. So ominous and so vague.
Yes.
I don't know.
So fun to say. Also, geeboo.
The geeboo. I know, you have to say it in that way.
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
So Lucy wants us to get the scoop on what the heck the geeboo is, which she calls in her question, quote, "the cryptid that inhabits Montgomery in Franklin County."
Of course.
So, in the spirit of this Halloween season, I have spent a lot of time digging through Vermont monsters forums, local cryptid lists, and there is nothing about a creature called a geeboo.
What?
I know. So, I called in backup.
I'm Joe Citro. I've been collecting stories about Vermont's cryptids and hauntings and treasures and mysteries and madmen for years.
So this is Joe Citro, friend of the show. Some of you might recognize him from our episode about the Bennington Triangle. But Joe is the guy for local cryptids. He wrote the Vermont Monster Guide, the Vermont Ghost Guide. The list goes on. And so I asked Joe if he knew about the geeboo.
This first time I've ever heard of it was from you.
Ouch. So if Joe has not heard of it, we've either got a very fresh cryptid, a very new cryptid, or some wires have gotten crossed somewhere. Here's my theory. There is a famous cryptid in Franklin County, and it's this winged beast that kind of looks like a griffin, and it's called the Awful.
Oh.
Good name. I know. And so in a 2006 newspaper article, a local claims to have seen this creature in, quote, the geeboo area of Montgomery. So there's a Deep Geeboo Road in Montgomery, Deep Geeboo Falls. So who knows, but maybe that association with geeboo became shorthand for the Awful, or maybe Lucy's coworker mixed up the name, or, maybe Lucy's misremembering. Who knows? But this, I think, is sort of how folklore develops and changes. Also, for the record, Joe tells me that he is not buying the story of the Awful. He thinks a local journalist made the whole thing up 20 years ago. But that is a spooky story for another day.
When you said the Awful, I got a chill down my spine.
yeah.
I know, geeboo is kind of you kind of want to run into the geeboo.
Yeah.
The geeboo.
Geeboo's
but
like a
the
Muppet,
Awful?
one of the Muppets.
Totally.
And the awful
The
is
awful is to be avoided.
the
at all
awful is to
costs.
be avoided.
Yeah.
If you need a really, really last minute Halloween costume,
Oh,
we got you with the awful.
Our next question is a pretty momentous one. This is actually the very first question that Brave Little State ever received.
what?
Surprise! From someone named Kate McKernan way back in May of 2016. So I guess we're better late than never.
First ever question. Hope she hasn't been waiting by the computer for this one.
We've also received a bunch of versions of the same question since then, and they all go something like this. What's the story of the whale tail sculptures on I-89? Can all of you picture those sculptures?
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty iconic. They sit next to the northbound lane of the highway between the Shelburne and Williston exits, and they're kind of hard to miss. They're these two huge black granite whale tails, and they've sort of become this like Vermont roadside attraction. And it's notable in part because Vermont is a landlocked state. So on the surface, it seems sort of weird, especially since we did not succeed in acquiring Nantucket.
That's right.
Yeah.
So here's the tale behind the tails. No reaction. Okay.
Did you have pause for laughter written in your script?
Yeah, it says pause.
Once upon a time, many thousands of years ago, the Champlain Valley was the Champlain Sea, as in connected to the ocean. Ocean, whales, railroad workers in the Champlain Valley even discovered the fossil of a whale in 1849. Fast forward more than 100 years, a Vermont artist named Jim Sardonis was reportedly commissioned to make a sculpture for a conference center in Randolph, which he did, and the official name of it is Reverence, and it was installed in Randolph in 1989. But here's the catch. The conference center fell through, so eventually the sculpture was relocated to a business park outside Burlington, which is where it's been ever since. Now, you might be thinking, aren't there whale-tail sculptures today by the Randolph exit? There are. And that's because in the 2010s, the Preservation Trust of Vermont and the Vermont Community Foundation commissioned the same sculptor to erect another whale-tail sculpture at the original location in Randolph. That sculpture was installed in 2019, and it's called Whale Dance. It's near the southbound side of the highway right at the Randolph exit. It's similar to the original sculpture, but there are a few key differences. It's cast in bronze instead of granite. Jim Sardonis said he could capture the movement of the whales better that way in bronze. It's also about 3 feet taller, for what it's worth, than the original sculpture. I sent you guys photos of the whale tail sculptures because you never really see them in the same place.
You really can see like the movement of the tails.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's nice to see them not from a car going 70 miles an hour.
Speed limit 65, Burgess.
It's nice to see them not from a car going 65 miles an hour.
Michaela Lafrac here. We're listening to Brave Little State's 200th episode today on Vermont Edition. We have to take a quick break, but we're going to hear more questions and more answers when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks for listening to Vermont Edition, where support comes from UVM Cancer Center, sharing that November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month. Learn how lung screening can save lives at vermontcancer.org.
Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. If you're just joining us, we are listening together to the latest episode of Vermont Public's people-powered podcast, Brave Little State. It's their 200th episode, if you can believe it. And to mark the moment, the team tried to answer 20 questions in just one episode. The BLS team is made up of Josh Crane, Sabine Pooks, Burgess Brown, and their intern, Camila Van Order Gonzalez. I'll hand it back over to them.
This is our very special 200th episode spectacular. We're answering not one listener question in this episode like we usually do, but 20. We're about halfway through, and our next question category is culture and geography.
Okay, what is the pinpoint center of Vermont? I feel like there's some common wisdom about this. Do any of you know what the pinpoint center of Vermont is?
I would guess Randolph. I feel like that's very central Vermont.
Randolph? That is also what I thought. And that's actually what I tell people when they ask me where I live. I'm like, I live in the middle. Not quite. Randolph is actually not the pinpoint center of Vermont. According to John Adams at the Vermont Center for Geographic Information, the pinpoint center of Vermont is a spot in, of all places, East Roxbury. Roxbury is a small town northwest of Randolph, kind of closer to Northfield. Its population's a little over 600 people. And the best way to understand why this random spot in East Roxbury is the pinpoint center of Vermont is to imagine a pin. If you were to balance the entire state on the point of that pin, including, by the way, I asked the Champlain Islands and the Vermont parts of Lake Champlain, it would balance perfectly from this point in East Roxbury, which is, I guess, why they call it the pinpoint center.
Cool.
Anyway, I decided to visit this point to see if I could feel its centeredness. I'm driving up Drown Road. It's really beautiful. And I got to this bend in the road, and there was a field where the pinpoint center was, and there were tons of posted signs. You can really see the mountains, like layers and layers of mountains. So this is me sitting in my car pretty close to the point on the map that John sent me. I'm kind of a chicken about posted signs, so I didn't test my luck. But for what it's worth, the spot I was sitting in was pretty darn close to the pinpoint center. Not that you could even tell, there was no sign or plaque or anything like that. And it's just like classic Vermont. It's like hills, trees, fields. It's like, hits all the notes. I don't know what I expected from the pinpoint center of Vermont, but this seems to be perfect. Here we are, at the middle, almost. So that's the real pinpoint center of Vermont, some field in East Roxbury. John, with the Center for Geographic Information, he did have a very important qualifier that technically what qualifies as the pinpoint center is always in flux. Do you guys know why that might be?
Gravity? Just a wild guess.
Maybe the mountains get bigger or smaller,
Well, it's because, and I'm quoting John here, the entire North American tectonic plate is slowly drifting. So the absolute position of Vermont and its center is constantly, minutely changing. This question hit close to home for me as a lifelong Subaru driver. How did Subarus become so popular in Vermont? Is Vermont the state with the highest number of Subarus per capita? And that question comes from Kayla Loving. So, yes, Vermont does have the highest number of Subarus per capita, at least according to a website called iSeeCars.com.
Okay.
They did a study about a decade ago, and they analyzed more than 2 million used cars that were sold. They found that more than 11% of the cars sold here in Vermont were Subarus. For context, Subaru makes up 1.6% of the total auto market.
Wow.
And online, people speculate their popularities because of two main reasons. One, practicality. Subarus are known for doing really well in more rugged environments like that of Vermont. They are this sort of rare breed, more affordable all-wheel drive vehicle, which is probably why the second closest state to Vermont is Maine, even though they're leagues below us at just 6.5%. In fact, all the states on that list are states in New England, the Pacific Northwest, the Mountain West, and of course, Alaska. But another factor might be culture, because Subaru markets itself as the car for people who are outdoorsy and environmentally conscious. You might have also heard that Subaru started subtly marketing their cars toward lesbian drivers in the 1990s. There's a really great episode of NPR's Planet Money about this.
They kind of settled into a plan where they would use references that were obvious to gay and lesbian consumers, but not really to anybody else.
And Vermont is famously one of the most LGBTQ+ friendly states. For example, the podcast talks about a Subaru ad that showed a car with a license plate that said Xena Lover. Now, Xena Warrior Princess, for the uninitiated, is kind of a lesbian icon. So the marketing was kind of under the radar, so not to alienate other audiences, especially in a time when the attitude toward queer folks in mainstream culture was a lot less accepting than it is now. Basically, it was like an if you know situation. The kicker here is that one of the people who worked on that campaign and who was quoted in an article about the campaign that I read was my uncle Paul Pooks. So shout out to my Uncle Paul for the cutting edge marketing genius here. Love you.
Okay, so this is another question that hits pretty close to home for us here in this room because it is about someone's radio voice. And I'm going to let our question asker, Jason Cork, read his own question for us.
why do the weather forecasters sign off with such an odd inflection? Why is it, I'm Lawrence Hayes with an eye on the sky?
Oh, he did well there.
It's a good impression.
Yeah, I know. This is actually a pretty solid impression of our friend Lawrence Hayes's distinctive sign-off. For those unaware, Lawrence is a meteorologist at the Fairbanks Museum and a member of the Eye on the Sky team. Eye on the Sky weather forecasts have been on our airwaves here at Vermont Public for more than 4 decades. So there was obviously only one way to get to the bottom of this question, and so I called up Lawrence to ask him about it. And he says that he remembers exactly when he came up with his signature sign-off.
What?
It was about 15 years ago. He had just started with the Eye on the Sky team, and he was wanting to sort of set himself apart stylistically from his colleagues.
So what I endeavored to do initially was I wanted to end with some gravitas, So I'm Lawrence Hayes with an eye on the sky, right? Like take it down inflectionally at the end.
So he was at his home office, and he was just repeating this outro over and over again and getting more and more frustrated because he wasn't achieving this weight that he wanted, this gravitas. And eventually his wife came to check on him because he'd just been saying the same thing over and over again for so long. and Lawrence said that this interruption sparked an epiphany, that instead of going down at the end of his sign-off, he should add an upward flourish. And that has given us this gift.
I'm meteorologist Lawrence Hayes with an eye on the sky.
Oh, just iconic.
Gravitas indeed.
So there you go.
This is important to me. I would do that as a kid.
You would do an impression?
Yeah.
Oh.
Can we hear it?
No.
All right, we are on to our 4th category, politics. Burgess, you are first up.
Our next question comes from Chris Pitt, who asks, has there ever been a move to make Burlington the capital of Vermont? And the answer, Chris, is yes. There have been several campaigns over the years, but one of them really stands out from the rest. And Burlington really tried to hit Montpelier while they were down. The year was 1857, and the State House had just burned to the ground.
Oh.
Ooh. Really down.
Really down. And a bunch of cities saw this unfortunate event as their opportunity to swoop in and snag the capital away from Montpelier.
That's
wrong. Just brutal, I know. So Burlington, Rutland, Middlebury, and Northfield all came forward with big money offers to rebuild a new state house in their own backyards. Fighting ensued, and Burlington nearly succeeded. The decision went to a vote, and in the end, the Senate voted 13 for keeping the capital in Montpelier, 11 for Burlington, 4 for Rutland, and 1 for Middlebury. So basically the debate came down to this long-standing antagonism between rural towns and the bigger towns of the day that had been playing out for decades already. And it was sort of like, let's just keep the status quo. Montpelier was the middle ground and was able to retain the capital and rebuild the state house that we have today.
Oh my gosh.
How different Vermont would be if Burlington or Rutland or Middlebury were the capital.
Or Northfield. Don't forget Northfield.
No, they didn't get any votes. No
they
votes.
Didn't get any votes. I would vote for Northfield. I love Northfield.
Yeah, guys, we're on to our very last category. This one feels especially true to just the heart of this show. Name origin stories. Burgess, you got the first one.
I want to talk to you all about internet beef for a minute.
Yes, bring it.
There are a lot of people online, especially on Reddit, fighting over which city gets to claim the nickname Queen City. In one corner, Charlotte, North Carolina, named for Queen Charlotte, wife of King Henry III. And in the other corner, Cincinnati, Ohio, dubbed the Queen of the West by a local newspaper in the early 1800s and a Henry Wadsworth Longfellow poem a few decades later. So these two really duke it out. But there's also Denver, the Queen City of the Plains, Selma, the Queen City of the Black Belt, Buffalo, the Queen City of the Great Lakes. Not often mentioned in these debates, Burlington, Vermont. So one listener wants to know, why is Burlington called the Queen City? Well, it turns out that most queen cities, aside from Charlotte, don't have anything to do with a particular queen, but the term is used as kind of a classification. Queen cities are the most significant, usually economically significant, in their region. And then also some people say that it's the largest city in the state that's not the capital. And a lot of these monikers were adopted in the early lives of growing cities as a way to try to attract new residents and businesses. Burlington's dubbing as the Queen City was indeed pretty aspirational. The root of the nickname is traced back to Burlington's first mayor, Albert Catlin, soon after the city incorporated in the 1860s. He said, quote, "We represent a young city, which may in time be known and distinguished as the Queen City of New England."
He was manifesting.
He was manifesting. And I think that Burlington can definitely lay claim to being the Queen City of Vermont, but claiming the crown as the Queen City of New England might start some more internet beef. All right, class, I have a handout for this question. Does anyone recognize this image?
Nope.
No.
Oh, you're all getting a failing grade. This is the seal of the University of Vermont. The reason I'm showing you this is because this seal contains the answer to a question that I have secretly wondered about and been a little bit too afraid to ask, and that is, why is it UVM and not UVT? So, University of Vermont, why is the abbreviation UVM and not UVT? All right, Josh, can you read the text across the top of the seal for me?
Universitas V Montis.
Nice.
So the V here stands for Viridis. Viridis? Viridis. Universitas Viridis Montis, which is Latin for the University of the Green Mountains.
Oh.
The university's first president, Reverend Daniel Clark Sanders, was a big classicist, and so he pushed for the Latin translation to be on the seal. And then over the next few decades, the abbreviation of that Latin translation, UVM, would become the preferred abbreviation rather than the English one.
Wow. That's a great answer.
Really interesting.
And isn't University of the Green Mountains such a good name? Like, I wish that that's what it was called. It's
Yeah.
It's so evocative.
That was just a portion of Vermont Public's podcast, Brave Little State's 200th episode. To hear the answers to all 20 questions that the team tackled, be sure to listen to the full episode in the Brave Little State podcast feed. Coming up, we're going to be joined by two of the folks behind the pod. We're also opening up our phone lines. Has Brave Little State come to your community? Were you interviewed on the podcast? Or maybe you asked a question that's never gotten answered and you want to put in a plug for it. You can call in and tell us about it now. Our number is 800-639-2211. You can also email us at vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. We'll be right back. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. This hour, we have been listening to the 200th episode of Vermont Public's podcast, Brave Little State. To mark this milestone, the BLS team answered 20 questions in one episode, instead of their regular one question per episode. We're joined now by Brave Little State's senior producer and managing editor, Josh Crane, from our White River Junction studio. Josh, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and here with me in Colchester is the show's executive producer and co-founder, Angela Evansy, who is also Vermont Public's head of content. Angela, welcome.
Hi, Michaela.
And if you are a longtime BLS listener, we would love to hear from you. Maybe you've listened to all 200 episodes. Maybe you were in one yourself. You can call in at 800-639-2211 or email vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. So, Angela, we can now say officially that BLS has hundreds of episodes.
It's true. Yes,
Congrats.
we can add the S. It's a plural now.
Did you ever think when you were starting out that it was going to go on this long, 9 years, 200 episodes?
No, I mean, I think we've always just taken it one episode at a time.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see it get to this milestone.
Yeah. Well, this 200th episode was a really fun one to listen to. Again, we aired just a portion of it. So if you want to hear all 20 questions and 20 answers, be sure to find it in the in the Brave Little State podcast feed. Josh, one of the questions that you answered was the very first question that BLS ever received. Did you intentionally seek that one out? Did you really want to answer question one?
No, I didn't know that we hadn't actually answered the very first question we had received, but we did do an exhaustive search back through our archive in preparation for our 200th episode, and I noticed that question, and I figured, why not? Better late than never.
And you mentioned when you were introducing it that over the years, BLS has gotten some questions on that same topic, just worded in slightly different ways from different people. I imagine that happens fairly frequently. Are there certain questions or topics that you hear about again and again, Josh?
For sure. I think Angela can speak to this too. I feel like people are always curious about dirt roads, about recycling and composting. We get a lot of questions about creamies. So yeah, there's definitely these like buckets of curiosity that fill up over and over again.
Yeah, I have done a Brave Little State episode about a landfill, so I do know people are really interested in trash and compost. And
yes, there are a lot of questions about waste. We have literally done episodes about trash, compost, and recycling. And there's another theme in the questions, Josh, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there are a lot of questions about litter and like why people litter and what we can do to stop all of the litter on the sides of the roads, besides participating in Green Up Day.
Has Brave Little State tackled litter directly?
I don't think we have.
All right. Cool.
I think there's a Green Up Day episode in our future for sure.
Well, let's take some calls here. We have John calling from Syracuse. John, go ahead.
Hi. I'm calling about the apple pie story.
Oh, yeah.
My father used to, whenever we would have apple pie, would recite a little rhyme that he heard somewhere that was apple pie without the cheese is like a hug without the squeeze. And we never knew where he got that from. We never knew the origin. I know of no connection between my father and Vermont. We're from New York. Central New York, but there you have it.
That's so sweet. Thank you, John, for sharing that. And I see you're driving through the Adirondacks right now, so glad you were able to join us. Josh, the apple pie question was right at the beginning of the episode. Can you remind us about it for listeners who might not have caught it?
Yeah, we got a question from a listener that had learned. This person learned that Vermont has a law that requires anyone serving apple pie in Vermont has to put in a quote good faith effort to do so with one or more of the following, and it's like a glass of cold milk, vanilla ice cream, and I think it's a half ounce of cheddar cheese. And she wanted to know what the backstory of that law is. And so that was an especially fun one to dig into.
A good faith effort. So you're not like going to be imprisoned for not having cheese.
No,
on your
and
pie.
it's a pretty, I would say, as far as laws go, I would say it's a pretty informal one.
Yeah.
But the reporting process did involve eating apple pie, so that wasn't too bad.
Angela, when you first started the podcast, did you start to see a lot of questions come in kind of similar to this one about like the quirks of Vermont traditions or laws, obscure laws, things like that?
Yeah, I would say the quirk factor has always been fairly high, as well as the history. And, there's not necessarily a place in our ongoing news coverage for deep historical dives. And so it's been really cool that BLS can serve as sort of a vehicle for those historical explorations. And the other theme, I think, is just sort of like character, right? Like the Vermont character, what makes us unique, or all the ways that we think we're really special, but maybe we're not, right? We talk about the myth of Vermont exceptionalism a lot. So that's been, I would say, a focus of interest from the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, we have someone calling in with a question now. Oh, we might have just lost her. We will come back to you. Oh, we got her. Ruth is in Belvedere. Ruth, go ahead.
That's Rue, kangaroo.
Oh, hi, Rue. What is your question or your thoughts about Brave Little State?
One question that hasn't been answered right for years is why are there no ferries from Port Kent or Burlington to Port Kent? They kind of just disappeared under the radar.
So you've submitted the question. You're wondering, can they get to it?
Yes.
All right. Ferries from Burlington to Port Kent. Angela, do you remember this question coming through? Do you know anything about the ferries that cross Lake Champlain?
I don't. It's a good question, Rue. And yeah, thank you for flagging it. You have here Josh also, I think, who will maybe put it closer to the top of the list. I don't know. Thanks for letting us know.
Josh,
about
can
it.
you pull back the curtain on how questions are selected for Brave Little State? Because there is a method to your madness.
There is, and there's sort of a range of different ways that we end up with a winning question. We run voting rounds where we'll work with whoever's reporting an upcoming episode to select some finalist questions that are really interesting to them, and then we'll put them up for a public vote. And so not only does the public, do we ask people to submit questions, we ask people to vote in these voting rounds to help us narrow it down even further. We also have been hosting these live events where anyone who comes to the event can submit questions to the show, and then by the end of the night, we end up with a winning question for an episode. And so that's another great way to just engage people in real life. And then sometimes, depending on deadlines and what we've got going on, sometimes we'll just be like, you know what, there's a question in the archive that's been bugging me or like nagging in the back of my mind for a long time. Let's do it. And some of those have turned into, some fan favorite episodes as well. Yeah. So it's a mix.
Yeah. Rue, I hope your question gets up there sometime soon, but thank you so much for flagging it for us. We have David in Duxbury calling in. David, go ahead.
Yes, the situation about the origin of cheddar and apple pie.
Yes, what do you know?
Stephen King, in his book Firestarter, in a Vermont setting, part of the book, a couple said when serving apple pie without cheese is like a hug without a smooch.
A little different than the hug without a squeeze, but I'll take it. Thanks so much, David. We also got an email from a listener named Robin about the question, Josh, that you all answered in this latest episode about the gibu. Am I pronouncing that correctly? The
gibu.
The gibu, yes. Robin writes, Hibu is French. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. I apologize. It's French for owl. So maybe that's connected to the myth.
I will say we've heard from some folks since the episode came out who live in that area.
Yeah.
And the Gibu Road is sort of, my understanding is that it's sort of like shorthand for just sort of like the middle of nowhere. And so I think Burgess in the episode, he was like, maybe there was some mix up with just the name of the road and this supposed cryptid. So I think there's something to that theory.
Oh, interesting. I loved that story. That was great. It made me want to go searching out the gibu and the awful that live out there. One question that you two answered, it wasn't an official question, but it was included in this episode. We had to cut it for time, but I do want to get to it, is the story behind the name Brave Little State. Angela, where did this name come from?
Yeah, so when we were setting out to make this show, I was working with Alex Keefe, who kind of helped create the show. He was our All Things Considered host at the time. And we were trying to come up with a name. And we had a really, really long list of names that we had brainstormed. And we didn't really like any of them. And I remember one day I was walking on North Ave in Burlington after work and got a text from Al. And it was just a link to the Brave Little State of Vermont speech that Calvin Coolidge delivered. And at that moment, I think, just sort of sparked us both. And we were like, oh, yeah, it's got to be Brave Little State.
Ah. Was that always the front runner? Or were there other names you were considering?
Well, I've taken a little trip down memory lane as the show has turned 200 episodes, and I actually found the original list from our brainstorm, a shared doc where we were just collecting all of our ideas, good and bad. And there's some like fairly straightforward ones on here: Curious Vermont, VT Q&A, Green Mountain Wonders. There's some like
sounds like a gift shop.
There's some placey ones. So we have like These Parts, Crow Flies, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
Champ and Friends.
That'd be a great talk show.
And the one that I remember really pushing for, and I'm really glad that I lost the debate, was Home Place.
Ooh. I like that.
You do. So I liked it at the time too, but now it's also kind of like home goods store-y.
Right. Yeah. Like I'd like to buy a vase there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Well, I think you landed on the exact right
I think we did
name.
too.
Josh, what was it like for you going from being a listener of the podcast to being a part of the team? I imagine that transition was a little surreal.
It was. I mean, honestly, it was a huge honor. I was a listener for years before joining the team, and I always had a connection to the state, but for a long time I didn't live here, and so it was, sort of how I maintained that connection. And I have many fond memories of listening to early episodes in Boston and Providence and the Adirondacks and wherever I was. And so, yeah, ending up in Vermont and working on the show, it sort of feels like I have a connection to the community of listeners because I very much counted myself as a listener before, someone who makes the show.
Yeah. And Angela, you've kind of taken the opposite journey, going from being the founder of the show, a reporter on most of the episodes, an editor, to somebody who now gets to just tune in and listen.
I know. I mean, nothing fills me with more pride and contentment. I mean, it's so cool to see Josh, you and Sabine and Burgess carry the show forward, and to have that feeling of like looking forward to each episode drop. I mean, sometimes I know what you all are working on and we chat about it and so forth, but there have been so many episodes that I've just had the pleasure of encountering as a listener. And it's really a wonderful experience.
Yeah. This happens to me all the time when I'm out and about wearing a Vermont Public hat. Someone will come up to me and be like, guess what? I was just in the latest Brave Little State episode. Or if you listen to episode 37, that's my uncle in it. It really has such a deep set of roots in this state and in this region. Josh, you spoke a little bit earlier about the process for selecting questions. And I wonder if there's any questions on the list that, I don't know if you can reveal this, but you're really hoping that you can get to with the podcast in the coming months or years, or ones that maybe you're hoping to, give a little extra love to in a voting round. I don't know if that's kosher, but what's on your list?
Well, let's see. I mean, very top of mind is an episode that we're working to release in the very near future, and that's answering a question about the Tinmouth apple, which is an apple variety that has been sort of lost to time a little bit, and we go on a little journey of rediscovery, and so that's a very fun one coming up.
Good teaser. Angela, could we ever get you back as a reporter on one of the stories?
Oh, don't tempt me. That would be so fun.
Are there any questions that you're hoping one day the podcast can get to, or a subject that you'd like it to probe deeper into?
One of the recent episodes the team did I thought was so cool. It was a collaboration with CBC, Canadian Broadcasting, and I think actually aired here on Vermont Edition. And just going north of the border, I thought was a really exciting proposition, and would love for the team to continue to cross the border to answer whatever questions come up. It feels like a part of our region where it would be really fun if we could spend more time.
Angela Evansy is Vermont Public's head of content, as well as the Brave Little State executive producer and co-founder. Angela, thanks so much.
Thanks, Michaela.
And Josh Crane is Brave Little State's senior producer and managing editor. Josh, congrats on 200 episodes.
Thank you so much.
And if you have a question you want Brave Little State to answer in an upcoming episode, you can submit it at bravelittlestate.org. The episode you heard earlier was reported and edited by Burgess Brown, Sabine Pooks, Camila Van Order Gonzalez, and Josh Crane. Their executive producers, Angela Evansy, theme music by Ty Gibbons, other music by Blue Dot Sessions. Brave Little State is a production of Vermont Public and a proud member of the NPR network. And now to Vermont Edition, which was directed today by Aaliyah Papes. John Ahrens is our managing producer. Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro are our producers. Our call screener today was Rick Barrett, and our theme music is by Myra Flynn. Be sure to tune into Vermont Edition tomorrow, because we're going to be talking with two authors of two very different books. One is a history book about the Civil War. Another is by a Montreal author, and it is an illustrated guide to birds. Again, that's tomorrow at noon. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.